Well, welcome back to the Quiet Man series, chapter 6. The chapter is entitled Make Friends, Share New Experiences. And the overriding theme through it is something about a can-do attitude, which I definitely picked up when I went to the States for the first time. Yesterday, I left you with the little teaser that I was heading west. I was heading west to see Debbie. Now, I was able to get to the USA rather cheaply because I was in the RFA, the Royal Fleet Auxiliary. I was actually able to get an RAF flight, an indulgence flight. So I was in the fortunate situation where I was able to fly from England to America for £9. £9 one way. Absolutely brilliant. And a very useful thing on RAF flights is you learn that the way aircraft are constructed for commercial flights is, I'm going to say it's a load of bollocks. RAF flights, when you're a passenger, the seats you face towards the back of the plane and the seat backs are towards the front of the plane. That way, if the plane crashes, you've got the seat to cushion you. There's none of this brace, brace, brace nonsense. So whenever you go on a commercial flight, it's just PR baloney that makes the seats face forward. The real safe way to construct aircraft is to have the seats facing forward. Just one of those little things that you learn. Anyway, I got to Washington, D.C. for around some £9, and the plan was really to take Route 66 on a motorbike. I bought a motorbike. I started. I realised it was a real mare, and I took it back and got my traveller's checks back, fortunately. And I took a train all the way from Washington to Denver via Chicago. The initial plan on this leave was I actually had 3 months leave, but I was going to spend 3 weeks with Debbie in Denver. And I ended up staying 3 months. And I can remember her roommate, Barb, I could overhear her one night, when's he going to leave? I mean, the old adage is that you should never be a guest for more than 3 nights because, like fish, you go off. I was there for 3 months, but an absolutely wonderful time. And the highlights really for me was an introduction to Mexican food. But best of all, I met one of Debbie's friends, a chap called Charlie, who's become, well, he's a lifelong friend. And friendship was sealed over a bottle of Glenmorangie. He came round, he was studying quite close to Debbie's apartment on Cherry Street, and he came by after college one night, and we just sat down and demolished a bottle of Glenmorangie between us, and our friendship was sealed. He was rather wobbly on the way. In fact, I think he fell off his bike on the way back to where he was living, next to the Bull and Bush in Cherry Creek, if I remember rightly. Charlie also took me skiing up in the Rockies, and I'd never skied before. And the Rockies are just absolutely wonderful. So many places, Vale, Aspen, Winter Park, Loveland, Breckenridge, just an absolute skier's delight. And I was introduced to skiing in the Rockies. But it's that can-do attitude. It's not that expectation you're going to be given things. And I'd write a lot more, but about 30 chapters on from this, I'm going to write a paper and introduce you to it. But it's the difference between dependent, independent, and interdependent. I think in Britain we've developed this culture of being given things. The Americans have this attitude of making things. So all the students, when they're at college, they're always doing side hustles. And I was introduced to Mexican food because one of Debbie's friends was working in a Mexican restaurant between classes. Another highlight of this interlude, or this chapter, this episode, is taking a road trip. You forget how big America is until you start driving around it. And we took a road trip from Denver up to Minnesota, where Debbie grew up. Minnesota is known as the state with 10,000 lakes. And her family had property on one of them. And I was actually very fortunate that Vaughan was over. Remember the 3 Debbies? He'd actually kept in contact with one of the other Debbies, and he'd come over to see her, and we spent some time on this lake renovating an old canoe. Our seafaring skills had deserted us because as soon as we launched it, it sank, which was rather amusing. The road trip back, we took it up across the plains and ended up going through Sioux Falls, Cheyenne, Dodge City. I mean, if somebody that grew up on westerns, it was like a kaleidoscope of memories from cowboy and Indian days. Went back to Denver, it was time to fly home. And this time I couldn't fly home on an RAF flight. I had to take the good old Freddie Laker. And that was £59 to get back. I came back from Denver with a t-shirt saying, I'd rather be in Denver. And I took that onto my next ship. But more on that in episode 7. If you've liked this, give it a thumbs up. Please make a comment on it, share it with your friends. But there's more to come. But the real lessons from this: making friends, creating new experiences, and have a can-do attitude. There's more in the actual book, of course, but this is just a snapshot. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you very much.